Hi, Mom.
Good morning, Lizzie.
Welcome to another episode of today's yoga question. Here's a question. When I take a yoga class, when do I follow what the teacher says? And when do I follow what feels right for my body? The example I have for this is shoulder stand. I've learned from you to do shoulder stand with 5 or 6 blankets, and it feels amazing. But sometimes when I take a class, a more flow class, they just lead us into shoulder stand with no props. And I feel torn whether I should get up and build my platform and do shoulder stand because I want to protect my neck and it feels good, or if I should just go with the flow and follow the yoga rule in that moment, in that style of that class that I'm taking. So, how do you think about that?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind is it depends on who the teacher is. If the teacher is me, you should do exactly what I tell you to do. And if someone else, you should do whatever you want to do. But seriously, this question is, in my mind, in my judgment, a great question. And a great question to me always has within it its own inherent paradox. Light is my perfect example for that. Light is both a particle and a wave. And scientists tell us you can't have something that's a particle or a wave. It has to be one or the other. So, in a way, when we approach truth, whatever that means, and I'll put it in quotes, um, it always has a paradoxical part to it. So, if we look back historically at the teaching and practice of yoga, it was a teacher, a student. It was the immediacy of that moment and that relationship. And plausibly, if a teacher had more than one student, he would tell one student to do X and one to do Y in the same situation because he knew the student and therefore was intuitively aware of what that particular student needed to unfold another part of their being. Yoga was also a very much a solitary practice. We have the image of the hermit or the wandering mendicant or the meditator in the cave. Yoga as a group activity is an extraordinarily modern phenomena. So that starts us out if on this paradoxical pathway. So what I think and how I believe you need to answer that question, where I've gotten with that. I want to increasingly trust myself and tell my classes and make them repeat it out loud 3 times, like they were in the second grade. Trust yourself first. And when I say trust yourself first, I remind them very quickly that I don't mean trust yourself only. So we'll come to the only part in a minute. But what I do tell them is that I have made mistakes in my life. I'm going to make more. All human beings make choices that don't turn out well. Sometimes we only know mistakes afterwards, of course. Sometimes we know it's a mistake and we do it anyway. But generally, we do something and then we realize that didn't work. So I'm going to do that, as are you and everyone. But I find that I'm much happier living with the consequences of quote unquote mistakes I make if I trust my gut, if I trust myself first. And I believe that the entire evolution of one's own practice is to rely more deeply on one's own wisdom, accreted wisdom that comes from practice and from living. Because understanding can happen in a moment, but wisdom takes time. It's a different kind of knowing. So I want to cultivate, it's a high value to me in my personal life and in my practice world and in my teaching world to honor and encourage and to excite, if you will, each student's deeper trusting of themselves. However, if that trusting of the self, that pendulum swings so far the other way that we aren't willing to hear feedback or aren't willing to look at something from a new perspective, we have now just killed the goose that laid the golden egg. Trusting yourself is a wonderful thing to do in life, but not only. If we only trust ourselves, we can we can become even more mired in our prejudices, our beliefs, our misunderstandings about the nature of many things. So the trust yourself first, but not only, takes us to the other side where we want to be able to let down our guard in order to learn something new. If we're busy defending what we know, we never hear something new. So that it becomes then for me a matter of discrimination. And the Yoga Sutra says that the yogi becomes as sensitive as an eyeball. So, what I would say on the other side of quote unquote doing what your teacher says, it has to come from a deeper place of picking with great discrimination with whom you let down your guard. And that you do that in a slowly increasing manner, that you don't immediately give over to the teacher the power to make choices for you. And you never fully give it over, but you're willing to taste it. And that level of intimacy between student and teacher takes time because it demands wisdom on both their parts. So I can't tell you when to do one or when to do the other, but they go hand in hand. And somehow we just have to keep putting our foot out and hoping that the earth's going to be there when we put our foot down. We have to try not trusting ourselves to know how valuable it is. We have to see and reject and not take in what the teacher says to get to reap the good and the bad that comes with that.
Okay, Mom, thank you so much. We're having a tiny bit of technical recording issue. You're breaking up slightly, but I think that's a great place to leave it. Thank you for sharing your answer with us.
Namaste.
Namaste. If you enjoyed this conversation, there's a lot more where this came from on our online learning platform, teaching yoga teachers, and it's called Lassiter.yoga. Our newest course is about teaching yoga, and it's about to launch on April 22nd, 2016. Thank you so much. Namaste.